Well, welcome again to Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. This is day 3. I'm Bob Hales. I'm your moderator. I just want to again emphasize we've got the Wall Street Journal as a sponsor this year. They've got another actually fun workshop tomorrow at noon Central. It's on the schedule. It'd be nice for you to pop in at least for a few minutes. Our session today is examining a teaching assistant model for online courses. As you can see, we have Elisa, Robert, Dirk, and Juliana all here. They're going to tell us everything we ever wanted to know about using teaching assistants in online courses. So let me turn it over to you guys.
There's some big shoes to fill there. Boy, everything. Okay, we'll try. We will try. I'll start by just introducing our group and a little bit about our university and where we're coming to you from. I'm Elisa Shepard. I'm currently Associate Provost for Online Education at California Baptist University. We're located in Riverside, which is, sounds like we've got someone who already knows a little bit about Riverside, but we're just, I don't know, 30-ish miles east of Disneyland. So that's a nice little marker. And yeah, kind of about, an hour plus away from LA. Well, an hour, no traffic, an hour, which doesn't exist here. But in our dreams, it's about an hour. So my colleagues that are joining me here, Dr. Robert Shields is the Director for Online Curriculum Development here at CBU. Dr. Dirk Davis, Professor of Organizational Leadership, and also Juliana Carrera, who is the Assistant Director for Disability Services at the university, and also she specifically works with online students at the university. So that's a little bit about us. We're going to talk to you today about our teaching assistant model that we have implemented in our online courses here at CBU. I think next slide. Robert, are you controlling it or am I? You are. Great. Awesome. So just a quick overview of our agenda. We're going to provide some background for you. Dirk will share a little bit about our university and how we have come to have the online framework that we do at CBU. We'll talk about the TA model specifically and some of how we tested the effectiveness of it. We'll talk about some of the perceived benefits that we found from this TA model. We'll also share some of our personal experiences, just a couple short stories about kind of how we interacted with we were all in an instructor role with our teaching assistants and how that worked. And then share a couple of potential hurdles that, can be considered, as well as some conclusions, and then happy to answer any questions that you all might have. So first, I will pass it off to Dirk, who is going to share a little bit about the background of our university and kind of set the context for our TA model implementation.
Thank you, Elisa. I am a bit disappointed with the reference point of Disneyland in reference to our university, but Elisa has young children and it's accurate. We're close. We are located in Riverside, California, halfway between Los Angeles and Palm Springs. Is a non-Disneyland reference point. A private faith-based liberal arts institution started in 1950, 200 programs and majors, and 20 years of experience related to adult and degree completion seeking students, okay? In 2010, that changed. So prior to 2010, adult and degree completion was handled in a really traditional format, 1 or 2 nights a week, mostly face-to-face courses, maybe some online work towards the end of that first decade in 2000s. In 2010, the Division of Online and Professional Studies was installed, if you will. And our division inherited 500 adult and degree completion seeking students, 6 programs, and 6 full-time faculty. If you fast forward to, I don't know, the end of last year, that had morphed into 40 programs, 3 of which are professional doctorates, 50 full-time faculty, utilizing a pool of somewhere between 200 and 300 adjuncts, and serving approximately 5,000 students per semester. So some growth over that probably 10, 12-year period. Most of us are familiar with a sort of traditional teaching assistant model. And our question was, is a teaching assistant model an effective method of delivering online courses? We had understood some perceived benefits of using that model to include increased influence of our exemplary faculty with students. Think of those as rock star faculty, trying to increase their sphere of influence and put them in front of every, certainly gen ed or foundational course that a student would take. Difficult to do within our current volume just because of the number of sections. Increase student engagement with students. So in other words, free up some of their non-teaching time, grading, administration, et cetera, and put them in front of students more often. We also thought that this could become a training ground for enhancing the skills of potential TAs and even creating potential adjuncts from that pool. Really aligning faculty with their strengths. As I'm sure most of you realize, our strengths lie certainly in different areas of teaching, scholarship, and or service. And for those who are really gifted in the area of teaching, and certainly that relational component, we wanted to align those faculty. And at the end of the day, while it shows up last here, you'll see certainly at the beginning of this project, it was probably on the top list of our priorities to potentially save some money. Now I'd like to introduce Juliana to sort of introduce the TA model and its effectiveness. Juliana?
All right, excuse me. Hello, everyone. So our institution examined our TA model in online courses by collecting data over 7 semesters between fall of 2019 and fall of 2021. With the help of TAs in each of the courses, 21 of our full-time faculty from different disciplines in both undergraduate and graduate courses taught a total of about 100 asynchronous online sections. These courses ranged in enrollment from about 30 to 113 students, and dependent on the enrollment size, either 1, 2, or 3 TAs were utilized for each of the courses. And the mean enrollment per course was 76 students with an average of about 30 students per TA. In this particular model, 72% of our TAs were identified as not needing training, and therefore we considered these TAs to be our experienced adjunct instructors. So this meant that they had shown some type of teaching effectiveness and had experience teaching in an online program. On the other hand, there was about 28% of the TAs in the model that did require training. So these individuals may have had little experience with teaching, or may have been in a traditional setting, so face-to-face adjunct instructors who lacked that online teaching experience. And then lastly, we had very well-seasoned individuals who participated in this model. 97% of our TAs had a graduate level degree, with about 58% holding a master's degree and 39% having a terminal degree. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Elisa, who will discuss how we specifically recruited the TAs for this model.
Great. Thank you so much. Also, I wanted to just mention, I didn't say in the beginning, I intended to, if there's any questions along the way, you're welcome to put them in the chat. We can try to respond to them while during the presentation, but of course we'll have time at the end too. So yes, our TA model, the TA framework that we use is a little bit of a departure from a traditional situation. Maybe when we think about like in a face-to-face traditional environment, we think of teaching assistants who are usually undergraduate or graduate students. They are grading work on behalf of the instructor. They might even do a guest lecture, maybe leading a lab. Some of these activities, again, usually at the undergrad or grad level. And we really felt it was important that because of our online courses, and the environment there, the intense pace at which they're run, and the fact that the time in which we have and the ways in which we can engage with students is kind of, time with them is at a premium in the sense that we often don't have that face-to-face time. We are really kind of connecting and communicating with our students asynchronously through emails and through grading feedback and things like that. So we really, really wanted to make sure we had expert TAs, expert assessors who we as instructors could feel very confident knowing that the grading work is being done by someone who has some experience and some knowledge in this area, to provide this really great feedback for our students. And so that was a really important part of how we kind of modeled this particular framework. And so we, the TA recruitment and how we recruited, we have our national adjunct pool. We provided a survey to our adjunct pool all over the country to gain some knowledge. Here's this optional opportunity that we have to participate in a teaching assistant role. It didn't preclude them from being able to also adjunct. It was just an option. Should there be a time in which maybe we didn't have an adjunct course for them in a certain session, we could offer them a teaching assistant role if they were interested. And we were really surprised at the response. We had about a third of our adjunct pool express a positive interest in being in this particular teaching assistant role. I think in part through kind of some of our experience through it. One, we had fairly competitive compensation for this particular role. And also right around maybe even about 50% of what they would have been paid as an adjunct. So a decent compensation. They didn't have to prepare lectures. They didn't have to deal with, student issues. They didn't have to submit final grades. These things, they could really do the grading according to the timeline, but really in a flexible way and still be able to provide that feedback to students and engage with their work and provide that formative feedback. So we were really surprised and happy to see that turnout, which then in turn really helped us to have a very robust pool of adjuncts to utilize in this teaching assistant role. Some of the essential TA expectations that we had for this group and actually for anybody doing grading in our online courses, but we implemented that certainly with the teaching assistants, was their grading duties. So there was weekly calibration with the instructor. So if I was the instructor, I was meeting with my teaching assistants, 1, 2, or 3 of them, depending on the size of my class. And we were talking through the assignments for the week. I was providing them some structure in terms of my expectations so that I could feel comfortable knowing that the grading they were doing was really in line with what I expected for the students at that level of the course. Also, there was an expectation of a very swift grading turnaround. Again, this is a policy we have within our online courses in our university. 3-day turnaround time for grading for minor assignments, and then a 7-day turnaround for any major assignments. So we certainly held our teaching assistants to that same expectation. And then the expectation that they provide personalized written feedback to students, not just, including a score in the gradebook, but that there was very formative, thoughtful, personalized feedback to the student for, their own development. So those are just some of the general expectations. And then when it comes to how we kind of gauge the effectiveness, we were most interested in defining effectiveness based on the student course evaluation scores. We really wanted to know, is the student experience about the same or maybe better? Hopefully not worse if there's a teaching assistant. We really, really wanted to know that there was, hopefully no significant decrease in the effectiveness of that course and in the student's experience. So we looked at the score of the teaching evaluation score for an instructor for the TA section and compared that to a historical section or sections that the instructor taught in a previous time when they taught it solo on their own with no teaching assistance. And we were interested to see, is there any distinct differences between when they teach it solo and when they teach that course with a teaching assistant? Just a note here, course evaluations were on a 5-point scale, as many probably are. And the top 2 is defined as the percentage of 4 and 5 ratings that the instructor achieved. So on the, over here on the right side, I guess, of the screen, the mean top 2 percentage, which is again the 4s and 5s for the historical non-TA'd courses that were taught just by the solo instructor. The mean top 2 was 95.6%. And for the TA model, it was 96.2%. So we were really happy to see an increase, very small, modest, but certainly not a decrease. And we were really grateful for that. And then the mean average score, again, on a 5-point scale, the historical non-TA 4.66, and the TA model having a 4.70 average score. So overall, taken together, we were really pleased, recognizing that there was a similar student experience, maybe slightly better, not a huge difference, but certainly similar experience in the solo taught course versus the TA'd course. And so we felt confident that this was a very positive experience for students and that there weren't, any significant downsides to it just because of a TA'd element of it. I'm going to pass it off to Robert. He's going to share just a little bit more about some of the other additional perceived benefits that we saw outside of that kind of quantitative data.
Thank you so much, Elisa. So now that we've seen the data, let's talk about the perceived benefits of this teaching assistant model. As Dirk mentioned earlier, initially our primary objective was to achieve cost savings and achieve cost efficiency. And we did find some modest cost savings through the use of this model. On average, per course, we saved about $1,036, and that would be about a 10% savings. And so overall, we saved the university about $104,000 over a 2-year period. And so there were some modest cost savings, and the cost savings came when we were able to find that sweet spot where we were able to balance the number of TAs with a particular number of students. And for us, that number was about 110 students in a course with 3 teaching assistants. So cost efficiency was there. However, I think that there are some benefits that are even more important that come from the teaching assistant model. For one, students get increased exposure to an exemplary faculty member. In this teaching assistant model, we choose dynamic rock star faculty. Now, as you can see with the little rock guitar there, faculty that are really well seasoned in their teaching style and are well-versed at teaching online. And we found that course selection is really key for this. We really work to apply the teaching assistant model to some of our lower division courses with high enrollment. And so that way we can capture the students early on in their program and expose them to some of our rock star faculty. So that's really worked well for us. We've also found that the teaching assistant model provides an excellent training ground for aspiring instructors. So many of the instructors come from a variety of backgrounds, of course, in different academic disciplines. Regardless of where they're coming from, they're able to learn best practices from the instructor of record, whoever that lead faculty is, whoever that rock star faculty is. And so by watching that faculty member and calibrating with that faculty member over the session, they're learning those best practices. And This experience for them can lead to independent teaching opportunities for them, whether they are leading their own course as a part-time or adjunct instructor, or leading their own course as a full-time faculty member. And our hope is that individuals that serve as teaching assistants in this model have fewer questions when they start teaching on their own. Also, faculty get more engagement time with students. So we know that grading is an essential part of being a faculty member. However, through the calibration process with the teaching assistants, faculty can actually spend less time grading and more time communicating with their students, getting to know their students and answering questions. Of course, in the teaching assistant model, faculty typically have more students to respond to. So the model gives them plenty of time to do that, and also provides more time for enhancing course materials, providing interactive multimedia, and really refining the materials that they're providing to the students. Also, this model aligns faculty with their strengths. If they have strong management skills, if they're uber organized, if they are skilled in leading a team of instructors, those faculty members really thrive through the use of this model. So I'd like to hand it over to Elisa to share some of her personal experiences with the teaching assistant model.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, we just want to share really briefly a few of our personal experiences. We've kind of shared the framework, but wanted to give a little color to it as well. In my experience in working with the students that I worked with, the teaching assistants that I worked with, who helped me work with my students, I ended up taking on a lot of, I had some seasoned folks, but the majority of mine TAs were individuals who either had very little teaching experience or some traditional teaching experience in person, but not a lot of online teaching experience. And so I was able to utilize my opportunities kind of with these individuals to help to train them in within the university policies, help them understand course management skills in our LMS, which is Blackboard. So some people maybe were unfamiliar with Blackboard. So it provided me the opportunity to take these individuals who had the expertise, who had the knowledge, who had the demeanor to be really effective in teaching online students, who had the passion, but maybe who just lacked some of those skills in teaching online. And so it was a really nice opportunity to collaborate with them, to help them understand some of the ins and outs of how to do that. A practice that I often would do with teaching assistants who, again, lack some experience. If I had a tricky situation come up with a student, like a tricky student situation, I would maybe forward them that email and say, hey, everyone, what do you think about this? This is how I handled it. What do you think? Or maybe I wouldn't even tell them what I did. I would say, what would you do in this situation? And it provided us the opportunity to have some discussion around what to do when the student asks for, extension on a paper at this time, and here's the circumstances. What would you do? So it just helped us to really think through things in a nuanced way, helping people come to the situation with thinking about all the different scenarios and university values, and again, all the things that we want to bring. So it really provided rich opportunities for that. And that was really, I enjoyed it as well. Selfishly, I really enjoyed getting to know my TAs and working with them in that way. So that's just one area that I felt was really fun and helpful, and that worked well. A lot of my TAs are now adjunct teaching on their own. And so that was a really a positive experience. So Robert, how about share some of yours?
Thank you so much, Elisa, for sharing those insights. So I've been fortunate to be part of this teaching assistant model for maybe 2.5 years. And over that time, I've had a mix of seasoned teaching assistants, those that have served as adjuncts, and also what we would call training TAs, individuals that are brand new to instructing students and serving as graders for courses. So through that process, I was able to find a couple of teaching assistants that I really worked well with, and those that really caught on quickly and were able to operate within the parameters of the model. And so through that, we've been able to refine a system. So after working with these teaching assistants, we were able to work on an orientation at the beginning of each session. And so when I had returning teaching assistants, those teaching assistants were able to share the things that worked well for them. And then they were also able to share the things that they want to change for the upcoming session. So bringing in their previous experience in the previous session was really helpful. And I hope that sharing that information with the entire teaching assistant team helped everyone. And so I thought that was a really effective way to start each session. I will say this too, it is really important to make sure that the teaching assistants understand their role fully before they start working with you. I had a situation where I had a teaching assistant in my course that had also taught their own course independently. And they had a difficult time understanding their role as a teaching assistant, being used to running their own class. They wanted to be more in the forefront, but in order to ensure that we were operating with one voice as we engaged with students, we had to make some adjustments with that particular teaching assistant and really just make sure that they were working within the parameters to ensure that the whole system ran smoothly. So Juliana will likely speak more about that, but I'd like to hand it over to Dirk for his personal experiences.
Dirk, you're muted, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was in a different role at the time, a bit more of a structured, hectic schedule. And I don't consider myself a rock star faculty. So perhaps for those two reasons, I got the pick of the TAs. So it may not have been a rock star faculty involved, but there were certainly rock star TAs, I assure you. So I had the same ones throughout the entire process, I believe. I too wanted to follow that one voice model that Robert talked about. So mine were completely behind the scenes. That first week, we shared expectations, discussed their role. In subsequent weeks, we spent our time talking about student challenges. In other words, if there was a challenge where they thought additional professor input or reaching out to talk to that student, communication, et cetera, would be helpful, they let me know. We calibrated assignments, and then we spent time looking at the next week to ensure we were all on the same page related to that as well. I had just a really positive experience. I think my gains related to effectiveness related to top 4s and 5s were probably higher than the mean that we ended up with. So I was really happy with the process. It left me time to really focus on my learning videos and actually proactively reach out to students who, if they weren't struggling, had the potential to be struggle. So I was really pleased with that extra time it freed up for me and saved me from having to grade. And that's my experience. And Juliana, back to you for other potential hurdles.
Thank you. Thank you, Elisa, Robert, and Dirk for sharing your experiences. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit now about 5 of the potential hurdles that we thought may affect the conclusions that came from this study. The first potential hurdle is student perception. So there is the possibility that students in the TA sections may negatively perceive TA grading partly due to the expectation of the course instructor grading their assignments versus the TAs. However, instructors can lessen this negative perception by being upfront with their students and informing their class that the TAs have been calibrated well to help with assignment grading and to provide that personalized feedback in a faster manner. Another potential hurdle is the complexity of the course. So it may be difficult at times to recruit TAs for graduate and upper division courses, partly because the TAs may not have the knowledge needed to assess the assignments or even to provide that personalized written feedback. And then there's the issue of time and competing responsibilities of the TA. Some of our TAs work part-time. They may also work at other organizations or even hold a full-time job. This could affect how the TA approaches their role. And we may find that their commitment level may not be as high as the lead instructor for the course. And then there's also the potential hurdle of cost savings. So fortunately, our institution was able to save some money because we were able to find that sweet spot when it came to the number of students enrolled in each of the sections, or each of the TA sections. However, these cost savings aren't always guaranteed, simply because it depends on your university's pay structure. And then lastly, there's the potential hurdle of personality and disposition of the TAs and the lead instructors. So we did find that some individuals did prefer working in the background, solely just grading, which was alluded to earlier. And there is the potential to come across some individuals who may want to engage with their students in a more one-on-one level. So therefore, it's important to make it clear that what the TA role consists of. And if this is done, then we find that this model is most effective when the TA is comfortable solely grading behind the scenes. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Elisa and Dirk, who will leave us with some conclusions.
Dirk, you're up first and you're on mute again.
As we debriefed with the faculty group, after particular sessions and at the end of the project, we found that many of the challenges had to do with not having strong instructor management and organization. Remarks that we heard were that there was a disconnect between the roles instructors wanted the TA to have and the roles the TAs thought they had, lack of calibration, and just some other items related to management and organization. So at the end of the day, that's a must. We found that the student negative perception related to the faculty member of record, perhaps not doing all the grading, was a non-issue. I can't think of one instance where it came up. I started the project listing my TAs on my syllabus and then communicating to students that calibration would happen for every assignment. And they could rest assured if they got a comment from a TA, they could consider it coming from me. At the end of the day, though, I took all of that off because there was no TA student communication and rarely any challenges related to assessing student work. We also found that, as you might have guessed, aligning faculty with their strengths was a win for everybody involved, right? So we were looking for these rock star faculty really excelled in teaching. Some of them excelled in other areas, scholarship and service as well. But these were the best of our teachers. And so we wanted to put them in front of more students and give them time to engage and do what they do best. And they really, most of them really enjoyed it. And subsequently, at least if we use those course evaluations from students, the students enjoyed it immensely as well. Elisa, you want to finish the list?
Yeah, definitely. So final things, what we concluded we really valued that emphasis on the relational engagement. So by freeing up, I can speak personally, by freeing up a little bit of my time, a few hours in my week where I'm not assessing as much student work, it freed me up to make appointments with students to really address maybe questions they had on course material, to address questions they might have about professional development or graduate school, or, if it was an undergrad course or what they were doing next. So I found it to be really nice. I had kind of little free pockets where I didn't feel as strained in terms of my schedule, and being able to open up time to have these conversations that maybe would have been harder to schedule with, more administrative responsibility, let's say. Also, the potential modest cost savings per section is obviously something that could be very appealing to most organizations. Saving money is never a bad thing. Again, that's all going to be really reliant on your university pay structure. Again, we saw some small cost savings, when you have multi-million-dollar budgets, maybe 100,000 over 2 years, not really, a massive amount, but it is definitely, it does help, and it is in the right direction. It's not costing more. So that's definitely appealing. And then the final thing is related to just the benefits that we saw in the opportunity to train TAs as future adjuncts, or some who wanted to stay in the TA role, who were maybe earlier career, but really so many benefits to using that space where they have the demeanor of the instructor is one that really they enjoy working with others and managing others and teaching them and helping them through. And when that good demeanor is met with, a very promising TA or young adjunct, there was just so many benefits, and we saw that happen a lot. And again, just had a really positive experience with that. So that summarizes our model and some of the conclusions, and we're happy to open it up if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, anything we can clarify, we'd be happy to. So Q&A time.
Okay, thank you all for that's a great presentation. I appreciate it. My name is John Voll. I'm at Grand Canyon University. Could you go into more detail about your overall TA model? Were these TAs 100% grading, or did they have student contact? Were they tutoring? Were they doing other support?
Yeah, great question. I can share mine. If I'm leaving anything out, please feel free, others jump in. The general setup was that they were solely responsible for grading. 100% of their time was either grading or calibrating with the instructor. So they weren't doing the way we had set it up was they didn't have any direct student contact. The students were still coming to me as their instructor. They were aware, again, perhaps on my syllabus, I had indicated these are the TAs I'm utilizing, but everything still comes through me so that I wasn't losing out on that contact with the students. And then if there was an issue, maybe a complaint about a grade, then I would be able to kind of collaborate with that TA, and then I would respond back to the student, which even again is a little different in the model from how I remember being an undergraduate and graduate students. The TAs often did a lot of the communication on behalf of the instructor. They were the ones you would have a question for the instructor and the TA would send something back to you and you're like, hey, wait a minute here. So we went a very different direction. This is really that one voice model coming from the instructor and the teaching assistant really in the background to provide that help and in grading only. And then we sort of were able to speak directly and still connect with the student directly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they weren't doing any additional tutoring. We had some tutoring. We have some just university tutoring services that if there was a situation where tutoring was necessary, we would send them through those other channels. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, to piggyback off of Elisa, there were some times when some of the teaching assistants had some flexibility in the way that they provided feedback to students through the grading process. And I think about in the class that I normally teach with the model, it's a computer concepts course, and there's a discussion board activity. And in that discussion board activity, the teaching assistants have been encouraged to, provide a faith-based perspective, based on whatever the student posts. Sometimes the students may post post information about maybe struggles that they're having in their academic life or in their personal life. And us being a faith-based institution, you know, we have all of our teaching assistants are Christians as well. And so they can use their faith to not only provide feedback on the assignment, but to provide encouragement to the students as well. So that's, and I've seen the teaching assistants take, you know, different angles toward providing feedback and encouragement that, you know, I thought I was really inspired by.
But that reminded me of a follow-up question, and now it just flew out of my head, of course. In terms of their role, though, from the sounds of it, with the mentorship that the Rockstar was providing to those TAs, I assume that they were required to be in class, or was that an option for them to come and observe?
Not necessarily. These were all asynchronously online courses. I know for me, I would ask my TAs to be sure and watch my agenda video, which usually runs 10 to 15 minutes, and it's going to walk through students through a particular week. And obviously they would have to read assignment criteria, and both had experience in the field of organizational leadership. But attending a class or watching all my lecture videos, if you will, was not required.
Very good. I asked because we're experimenting with a new model that's actually virtual and synchronous, and we put some TAs, we call them instructional assistants, but they're TAs, and grading was actually downplayed for them, and they're actually there to provide more student support. And we're still holding our breath to see how this all goes, but it shares a lot of similarities. Our typical model shares a lot of similarities with yours, but this one was a little bit new, so we will see. We will see.
Well, that's a good point, John. And to add on to what Lisa said earlier, I rarely direct students to our university support center for something like that. But this model did free up time for me to provide additional assistance for students in the form of tutoring, mentoring, professional development, which I think also speaks to the specific role of the faculty member in this model. They have to have a developer mindset, right? So they want to develop the next generation of TAs and or adjunct or full-time instructors, and certainly want to be involved developing their students beyond just, you know, giving lectures and answering emails and that sort of thing. So I think that's another sort of subtle nuanced distinction of this particular model, I think.
And I love that. Really reinforce sort of what I'm trying to do right now, which is identify who my rock stars are and get them placed into these courses. I mean, I'll be honest, the students are really struggling. I oversee science coursework, and students are really struggling in the virtual models. And so we're trying to make some headway there. What was the variety of coursework? I don't want to dominate. Sorry if anyone wants to jump in. I saw some WPI folks in the room. I want to give a shout out to them too. My daughter's an recent alum, so fantastic. But anyway, what was the diversity of coursework that you guys employed this in?
Yeah, there was a big variety. So, I mean, just even in the three of us, I teach in the field of psychology, counseling, psychology training, MFT therapists. Robert teaches in computer information and IT, and then Dirk teaches mostly in organizational leadership. We had folks teaching in the sciences. We had folks teaching humanities and history at the undergraduate level, some graduate level courses in organizational leadership, psychology, education. We had a lot of courses taught in undergraduate education and then graduate level education. Yeah, a really big variety.
Public health and kinesiology, I think.
Yes,
Lisa?
thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
sure.
thank you. Lots of public health and kinesiology. We really tried to look when we were, to your point a minute ago about like just trying to find those rock stars. It was like we looked when we were really trying to identify people, it was like, okay, we looked certainly to a lot of our leadership to start, like, these are already people who are, temperamentally already fit for having that developer mindset and wanting to try something new and kind of see what we could get. And so it was a really big variety of everybody kind of in these various leadership roles. And then we started to trickle. When we saw some success, it was like, okay, now we'll trickle down. We'll ask this person and that person, and maybe we won't ask that person again, but maybe we'll go over here instead. So yeah, there was only probably one or two that struggled more, and they were like a one and done type of individual. So, and it was mutual. It wasn't like we said, hey, you can't. It was like, I think this is not a good fit for me. So yeah, a lot of trial and error, I guess.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
From my perspective, though, it was more difficult determining the successful course and not the faculty member. Well, I've always felt like we couldn't complain about the faculty because we hired all of them. We were a startup that lasted for, I don't know, I felt like we were in startup mode for 10 years. But I really felt, you could throw a stick in any direction and hit a rock star faculty member. So for me, it was more about, okay, what's the best type of course? We were leery about sciences at first, and then kinesiology and some of those a little bit more harder science courses stepped up and were successful. I know in org leadership, I taught everything from an intro to a decision-making course, which is quite difficult for undergrads. So to me, we did have a couple who self-selected out, some with our help, but they selected out. But really, it was more of defining the right curricular area and type of class. That was more of a puzzle from my perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and appreciate that. Unfortunately, I don't have any choices.
Right. Sorry.
Any other questions or thoughts or fun stories you want to share about your last trip to Disneyland? I don't know. Dirk's not into Disneyland.
No Disneyland stories, please.
He doesn't approve.
I do know I feel certain I can speak for the group. If you have any questions or we can help in the future, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. It's a passion for all of us. We still enjoy talking about it, even though personally I'm not doing it anymore. But happy to share any information or troubleshoot or brainstorm with anyone. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much, Elisa, Robert, Dirk, and Juliana. It was very informative and helpful. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all.